Hi everyone, my name is Kat. I'm one of the integration engineers here at Bitwarden. Our team is part of the customer success team. We provide technical troubleshooting as well as these demos of the platform to show our customers ways of deploying Bitwarden with the best practices and security standards appropriate to your enterprise. This enterprise demo is designed to address most use cases. It's a large product with many capabilities and functionalities, so this would be covering what most of our enterprise clients would be working with. So let's start here. We are at the download page of our Bitwarden website, and on this page, we can see all the various applications and clients Bitwarden supports. We have desktop applications for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and just under here, you will be able to find the installation guides for those applications. I'd like to point out, opening up this installation guide as an example, we have a really great documentation team, and this is something our customers give us great feedback on. If you're ever confused about anything, or you'd like to explore more of something that I've brought up on today's demo, you'll likely be able to find it very well detailed on our Help Center, where practically everything related to Bitwarden is extremely well documented. Okay, so back to the download page. I'm just going to collapse this. We have browser extensions for all popular browsers. I am on Google Chrome right now, so this is what it looks like. Mobile applications on the App Store or Google Play respectively. It's also an app on Apple Watch. The command line interface for developers to execute scripts and set up any helpful automations. And of course, the web application, which is what I'll be doing most of the demo on today. I'd like to note that for all the clients you see on this page, there is user-facing feature parity. This means that whatever you can do from a user-facing standpoint on the mobile app, you can do on the web vault, you can do on the CLI, etc., etc. Another thing I would like to point out here is that unlike some other password managers, we have no device limits even on our unpaid free version of Bitwarden. You can sign on to as many of these clients as you would like, log in, and use Autofill on all of your laptops and mobile phones. Apart from all the clients we see here, we also have the self-hosting option for Bitwarden. So right now, the account I'll be demoing from is from our Bitwarden cloud instance. This is just a standard when you come to this page and you sign up. We as a company manage our servers on Azure. If, however, you wanted to manage your own entirely separate instance of Bitwarden on your own server with your own domain, you are able to do that. Interface-wise, it will look exactly the same as the cloud instance, but you have complete control over your own instance, and it's not linked in any way to our instance of the product, except through billing. You can see all the documentation for how to self-host here. Again, it's incredibly well documented, but I still recommend having someone with a strong technical background to manage your instance if you're looking to self-host, especially given that it's related to your company's cybersecurity. Most of our customers do just go with using the cloud version of Bitwarden. It's a lot easier and less overhead, so that's what I would generally recommend as well, especially as an enterprise customer. Great, so now moving on to signing into the Web Vault. The vault you see here is one that I've already signed into. This is my demo account, and this demo organization is called the Cat's Meow. As an enterprise customer, you have a couple of sign-on options. You are able to sign on with a master password, or you have the option to leverage our enterprise features through single sign-on, which decouples the authentication step through your IDP prior to the decryption of your vault. The information and documentation on single sign-on is all laid out on this help doc, including how to do that for your specific IDP. As you can see here, we have both SAML 2.0 and OIDC implementations. We also have a sign-on option that is coupled with login with SSO called Trusted Devices. Using Trusted Devices gives you a way to bypass the use of a master password through what we call Trusted Device Encryption. Instead of using a master password as the decryption key for your vault, your local device client will save a device key that will act in place of the master password to decrypt your vault. All the information about trusted devices can be found on this help doc. Do note here, though, that if you are an admin or an owner, you will always have to have a master password, and this is to account for any break glass emergency situations. So the next thing I'd like to do is discuss and help you guys understand from a high-level approach how Bitwarden uses what's called a zero-knowledge encryption model. To explain what's meant by zero-knowledge encryption, I have a handy little attachment on one of my vault items. So let me just download that over here and open it up. So I drew this myself, so hopefully you guys can all appreciate my art. Zero-knowledge encryption means that anything that gets sent to our Bitwarden cloud servers or your own self-hosted servers is 100% entirely encrypted. We have zero knowledge of any of the data in your vault and zero knowledge of your master password. All the decryption happens entirely on your local device. No one at Bitwarden or otherwise knows your master password or has access to any unencrypted data. As you can see here, the first step is that user A would request access to his or her vault on either our cloud-hosted server or your own self-hosted server. Type in the email to identify this vault. In step 2, we see that this vault, as an entirely encrypted entity, is sent to user A's local device. It hits user A's local device still 100% encrypted. Step 3 is where user A enters his or her master password, which kicks off the decryption process, and only then can user A access any unencrypted data in the vault. This is what is meant by zero knowledge. The data is secured with a unique user key, which service providers do not know, and only the owner of the data can access any unencrypted files. It's a security model that sets up encryption and data segregation in a way that's designed to make data breaches irrelevant. So now I'm going to go into showing you the basic structures of navigating the web vault. One thing you'll note as I do this part of the demo is that Bitwarden is not only the best way to increase security for an organization, it is also a productivity tool for staying organized, which I'll seek to highlight during this demo as well. So as you can see here, I have a left-hand sidebar navigation and a section over here titled Filters. On the right here are all my saved items. Over here, you'll see in this column Owner, we have a tagging feature where you can see what belongs to the organization and what belongs to me as an individual employee. So as an example, I have my individual Asana login versus my shared Canva login, where in this example is an item that belongs to the marketing team to create marketing designs and assets, which I have access to as a member on the marketing team. This is basically what you see over here with all vaults versus if I click My Vault, these are my individual employee work vault items, versus when I click the cat's meow where I can find all the organization-owned items that I have access to or were shared with me. The organization vault is a cryptographic entity that owns all shared vault data, and the individual vault is a cryptographically separate entity. There is an option to turn off the use of individual vaults in enterprise policies, which I will touch on later. Now, if we go further down in this section, we see a few ways to sort items out. One I'd like to highlight is favorites. This is kind of like a bookmarks tab. And the nice thing with favorites is they'll be listed on the top here in the browser extension. So you can just pop that directly open from the browser extension, which will take us straight to the website we need to log into. It's super convenient for productivity. A lot of our customers love this feature for quick access to daily logins for work. Moving down the section, we then see folders. So folders are for the individual owner of the vault to sort out their login credentials, shared or individual, in a way that's meaningful to him or her specifically. They don't show up to anyone else, so it's a bit like using bookmarks. As you can see here, I can sort out both my individual vault items as well as shared organization items, but this doesn't change the item in any way to the organization. It just sorts out views for me as an individual user. This brings me to the next section, which is collections. So collections and folders differ in the sense that collections are like shared folders that belong to the organization. By default, they can be created by any user or admin, and managed permissions are assigned by whoever created the collection. If you prefer a more top-down approach to sharing and permissions, there is an option to allow you to restrict collection creation and management to specified users and/or roles. Managing a collection includes what's inside them, which users have access to them, and to what degree of permissions. Just to clarify the difference between folders and collections, with folders, I sort out items for my own viewing purposes, which can include both my individual vault items and my shared organization items, but collections are organization-owned items, and I only have access to the collections for which I'm given permissions or which I've created if I have that privilege. A good demonstration of this is that if I am in a collection and I hit my vault filtered view, you can see that it just pops me back into my individual vault, and the collections in the filters section will disappear because my vault doesn't have any collections. Collections are organization based. I will highlight here that if you happen to have an item in an individual vault, you can go to this three dots menu here and select Move to Organization, where you can then specify which collection or collections you'd like it to belong to move an item into the organizational vault. Okay, so back to all vaults and the collection view. You can see from the structure here that I can nest collections. So within design and marketing, I can have typical marketing logins, as well as specific to social media logins and video production resource logins. Do keep in mind that at the moment, nested collections do not automatically inherit permissions from the parent collection. There is a feature coming soon that will allow you to turn on permissions inheritance, but many of our customers also just like the nesting for an organized view. Let's get into a vault item and go over all its features. To create a new item, folder, or collection, you simply click on this New button in the top right corner, and you can select what you'd like to create. So if it's an item, this is what it's going to look like. Fill in the appropriate fields and hit Save. Let's look at an already existing item so that these fields make a bit more sense and I can highlight all the features of an item. I'm just going to use this search bar here and search for Amazon. And we see it's returned 3 different Amazon logins. Let's pick this one, AWS Shared Engineering Team. Now we can see here a couple more values filled out. So we have a name, we have a folder, a username, an easy way to copy that, the password that we can show or hide this way. This rotating icon here will help us generate a new strong password based on the generator requirements, which is an enterprise policy I'll highlight later in policies. And this will overwrite our original password that's currently saved here. This checkmark icon is leveraging the Have I Been Pwned API to check if this specific password was exposed in any data breaches. I'll also talk more about this in the reports section of the demo, so I'll circle back to that. And here we have a tool to show the character count. Further along down here, we have the time-based one-time password for multi-factor authentication. So this is really useful when you have a shared resource that requires a 2FA or a multi-factor authentication code. I personally used to work on an operations team, and a lot of these accounts had a TOTP I literally had to chase someone down for, or wait for them on Slack to respond and say, hey, right now, can I send a login attempt and you share the code with me within 5 minutes? Or the worst was when they were on vacation and I had to ping their personal cell phone. Well, no more of that with Bitwarden. Securely store your TOTP codes as well. When you generate a 2FA, the site will also give you an authenticator key that you can copy directly in here. This is also going to make the TOTP code available to the Autofill functionality. So it's really a very useful feature that improves everyone's productivity. Moving along down here, we have URIs, which unlike some other password manager systems, is fully encrypted when it's in the locked vault. The reason we call it URI, I as an identifier, instead of URL, L for locator, is because aside from URLs that are locations on the internet, you can also input identifiers that Bitwarden will autofill, for example with mobile phone applications, which aren't internet locations. In terms of match detection for determining if it should fill in when you are at a URI, there is a resource on our help docs for how to manage the match detection, whether you want it to be an exact match, the base domain URI, or one of these other options. Below here are some notes, very useful for reminders if people need to share any notes. Coming down here to custom fields. So this is one of the really powerful features of productivity for using Bitwarden. Some sites require more than just a username and password login. There may be, as is the case for AWS, an account number or something else. The way to leverage custom fields is as such. I would right-click, go to Bitwarden, and this will be here when you have the extension installed, and select Copy Custom Field Name. Come back to Bitwarden, add a new custom field, and just paste that in here and give it the corresponding value. Now, as you can see, I've already done that up here, so I'm just going to delete this one, but now it will fill in with the appropriate value when I seek to make use of autofill. Further below here, we have a little report where we can see when we created this item, when it was last updated, when the passwords were last rotated, and even a password history of the last 5 passwords, just in case we accidentally wiped it without updating it on the third-party website. Down in the corner on the right here, we have the option to favorite or to delete this item. Note that this deletion is a soft delete. It will go into the trash where it will exist for another 30 days before it's permanently deleted. Okay, so now let's check out the autofill feature. On the Vault search, we can see here there are 3 different items that are returned when I type Amazon into the search. If we go to the AWS page, you can see in the browser extension here a little badge with the number 3 on it, indicating that we have 3 different logins for a matching URI. There are a couple ways of autofilling. You can come in here, right-click, go to Bitwarden, autofill login, select which one you'd like to use. We can also pop open the extension and we see the matching URI logins are listed at the top here. If we click on any one of these, it will autofill. But my favorite way is to use the keyboard shortcut Shift-Control-L, which will do the autofill for you. Given that there are 3 different logins, it will autofill with the last one you used to log in on this URI, and then cycle through them as you continue to hit the keyboard shortcut. There is also a setting in the browser extension where you can set Bitwarden to autofill upon page load, so that once the page loads up, it will automatically detect and autofill. And this is an enterprise policy that can be set as a default. While we're talking about the autofill on the browser extension, let me highlight some of our browser extension features too. As I mentioned, there is user-facing feature parity, so all the functional features we saw in the Web Vault are on here as well. The first thing we see when we open this are the items associated with this URI. We can easily pop into any one of these items and edit it if we need to. If I were to successfully log into this website with a password that differs from the one saved in the vault, a little banner will show up at the top asking me if I'd like to update this password in Bitwarden. On the bottom here, there's a vault where my favorites are bookmarked, and all the other items are down here. Apart from that, we have a tab called Send. So this is a separate Bitwarden feature that I can touch on right now. I personally love using Bitwarden Send both in business and personal life. It's a great way to securely share ephemeral encrypted notes or attachments to anyone, whether or not the receiver has a Bitwarden account. To create a send, I would come in here, hit Add Send, give it a name, say the cat's meow to new Bitwarden users. We support file sending up to 500 megabytes, or it can just be text, say like test send. Down here we have a few options. I can hide this send's text by default, so like hide password, you just have to toggle that view to see the text. I can set a deletion date, give it an expiration date, or a maximum access count, all of which will disable the send once the limit is reached. We can also password protect this, so I may set it with a password and call you up on the phone to give you the password to access it. You can also hide the email address of your Bitwarden account from the recipients and deactivate this send prior to its deletion date. This is great for sending encrypted attachments securely as opposed to using email attachments. Sending sensitive attachments via email allows people to have it saved forever and be able to look it up and find it whenever they wish. It's really not a great way to do things. So Bitwarden Send is a great use case for resolving this. Another really good use case for Bitwarden Send is for sharing login credentials to a contractor that only needs to log in one time. Again, highlighting enterprise policies, there is an enterprise policy to disable this feature if you would like to. Back in the extension, the password generator is a free tool we offer. I pretty much use Bitwarden's password generator to create all my passwords, and we even have a feature down at the bottom here where you can access the password history of the last few passwords that were created, just in case you updated a website's password and forgot to update it in your vault. There's an enterprise policy that allows you to set minimum character requirements the password generator creates. Moving over to settings, up here in Manage is where you can set the autofill features, manage folders, manually sync your vault, and exclude domains where you can ask Bitwarden to not prompt if it should save your password. The prompt to save your password is relatively unobtrusive anyways, as it shows up as a little banner at the top, same as the update password feature, but excluded domains will prevent that banner from showing up. Moving along to security. Vault timeout is an important feature. This is when the vault should either log you out or lock you out of your vault, which you can specify over here. Logging you out will require you to re-enter your master password, whereas with a locking, you can unlock with a PIN or biometrics based on your device's underlying OS options. You can also configure two-step login here and some other options, including importing and exporting data. Okay, coming back to the Web Vault, I'm now going to get into more of the administration side of things. So we'll just be popping over to the admin console, which you can find up here in this waffle menu. So coming into the admin console tab, we land on collections. This console and view are only available to an admin or owner of the organization. We can see which groups have access to which collections and manage that access by this three dots menu over here. On the left here, we can go to the Members tab where we can see all the members of our organization and the groups the members belong to. Bitwarden supports SCIM provisioning with official SCIM integrations for the listed IDPs. Do note that unlike some other products, our SCIM provisioning does not require a SCIM bridge. Apart from SCIM, we have a tool called Directory Connector, which can sync with your IDP or your local LDAP-based directory. Directory Connector also comes with a command line interface, so it's really useful for setting up automations as well. Popping back over here, I'm now going to explain how Bitwarden uses a three-way handshake process to onboard a member. First, the members are invited, and they will move into this section. They'll receive an email to accept that invitation, and then they will move to this Needs Confirmation tab. Then an admin would confirm them into the organization where they will be added into the fully onboarded members list. This three-way handshake process is to ensure that none of the invitations get intercepted by bad actors, allowing someone malicious to potentially onboard into your organization and see shared passwords. There are bulk actions available, so you can bulk select everyone and confirm them in all at once. Over here, we see the groups the user is in, which can be automatically synced based on your SCIM groups, the user's role, and the policies they have here. Again, I keep mentioning it and we're almost there, but this will indicate whether they're using things like multi-factor authentication, or here it's account recovery, which I'll touch on in a little bit. If we click on the three dots here, we see a couple other options. We can pop open member roles and take a look here. In the Role tab, we have these standard pre-built roles, but we can also see there is a custom role. This is an enterprise feature where you can grant granular control of permissions to members on a user-by-user basis. For example, you may want your IT director to have a lot of control over managing company-wide shared passwords, but you might not need them viewing your legal and finance collection, or be able to delete collections. So it's a very useful tool for implementing the principle of least privilege access. In the Groups tab, pretty straightforward. If you're using SCIM provisioning with your IDP or directory connector, the groups will be updated as they are updated in your directories. In Collections, you can see for which member has what kind of access to each of the collections they have access to. In Permission in our collections, there are ways to have a bit of control, as you can see here. If you select one of the options with Accept Passwords, note that the passwords will be hidden in Bitwarden. However, once it's left Bitwarden, some websites you can toggle the view of a password. They will be able to see the password, so it's only for when someone is on Bitwarden, as we don't have control over it after that. All right, back to the three dots menu. Over here, there is Event Logs. In this event logs, we can see all the activities a member has taken, from which passwords they viewed to the last time they've signed in, and this is a log that goes back indefinitely. We log over 50 different types of events, so you can get a really good bird's eye view on user adoption if they're making use of a password manager or not at all. On the subject of reporting and event logs, I'm just going to jump over for a second from this member events log into the reporting tab. As you can see here, we have a fire hose view for all the events in the entire organization. Again, they go back indefinitely and contain a lot of information about the organization. And in this way, you can track and monitor user adoption. So the one I showed you before was for an individual member, but this is for all the activity in the entire organization. You are able to export this data over here, as well as integrate with SIEM solutions. So this page of our help docs details all the different kinds of events that we log. And over here, we have documentation for setting up the native integrations we have with Splunk, Panther, and Elastic. All right, back to the Members tab and our three dots menu. The last things on here is revoking access and removing a member. Those are pretty self-explanatory, although keep in mind that removing a member does not delete their account. There's a separate process to permanently delete their account and all the data in it. Finally, we have account recovery. This is where an admin can force reset the master password of an account in the case that a user forgets his or her master password. This is another thing that's controlled in policies, so let's finally get to that section of the demo. All right, so skipping over to the Settings tab, we can see and set here the basic organization information, as well as grab our API key if we needed to make use of that for an integration or something else. Going in here, we have the well-famed enterprise policies I've been talking about throughout this entire demo. These are generally pretty straightforward, but I'll run through them. Require two-factor authentication for every user, pretty straightforward. I will note that this is a policy designed for enterprise customers who are not authenticating through SSO, as typically SSO includes a two-factor authentication on the IDP side. Master password requirements enforces minimum character requirements for the master password. Remember that no encryption standards can make a vault secure if the master password is weak. Account recovery is the one I just mentioned. If users forget their master passwords and need a reset, users need to be enrolled in it, so this is where this policy comes in. Password generator policy, similar to master password requirements. This allows you to control the minimum requirements of the passwords generated by the generator tool on your end user's side. Single organization prevents a member from joining another organization, and this is required if you want to turn on the next policy, which is requiring authentication through SSO. This policy implies that they have to use the IDP to authenticate. Removal of the individual vault I mentioned earlier. This is something a number of our clients are interested in so that all passwords related to work end up in the organizational vault. Removing Bitwarden Send is for customers who prefer their users not to make use of this tool. Send options are related to the default options of the send. Right now it's just the option to hide your email, but we're working on expanding this to include those other options I had shown earlier. Vault timeout I had covered earlier while we were in the extension. This dictates how often the user needs to re-authenticate into their Bitwarden account, and the policy is where you can set a maximum vault timeout as an enterprise policy. If the user happens to be offline when they are timed out, the decryption of the data can still take place, but in a read-only capacity. Removal of individual vault export option. Similar to removing individual vault, this prevents users from exporting their individual vault data. And activation of Autofill. This is what I showed you earlier with the autofill on page load in the browser extension. Some of our clients want to have autofill upon page load automatically enabled for all users by default. All right, so I've covered most of the demo now. We're in our final stretch, which is more of perks and freebies, and this is going to be the best part. I'm now going to hop over to reports. These are reports you run through the entire organizational vault just to see if your company is practicing good habits with your password management to increase your organization's level of security. Let's start with exposed passwords. This is run on all vault items to check if you have any passwords that have been involved in a known data breach using the Have I Been Pwned API. So I don't know if you remember, but in a vault item, there is this little check mark icon. This report collects all of the exposed passwords in one place. So we see on this booking.com item, I have a password that has been exposed over 1,000 times. Checking this out, we see that the password is password123. I should really change that so that people aren't hacking my booking.com account to book their vacations. Back to reports. Reuse passwords is going to run a check through your entire organization to make sure all the passwords are unique. This helps to prevent hacking, so if 30 of my passwords were password123, I'd be in a lot more trouble than if only one were. Weak passwords report does the same thing, runs through your vaults to find any weak passwords that need to be updated, like this poor booking.com example. Unsecure websites is a report that checks that you are using HTTPS, the secure version of HTTP. And finally, the inactive two-step login. This is our integration team favorite. This shows you what accounts you have that offer two-step login, but you aren't making use of it. As you can see, if I click on instructions here, this pops out directly to the vendor's instructions on how to set up multi-factor authentication for a given website. All right, for our final bit of the demo, I get a lot of questions about freebies with choosing Bitwarden as your enterprise password manager. We do have a really awesome freebie, which is Families for Enterprise. To get to the Families for Enterprise, I need to be back in my password manager user view rather than this admin console. So I just have to go to my waffle menu here and select password manager and go over here to settings where I'll find a free Bitwarden Families tab. This is a free premium plan for anyone who has a Bitwarden Enterprise account. A Families plan is like a mini organization, and you can add up to 6 users, all with premium account benefits. It works in a similar way to an organization where you can have your own passwords in an individual vault and have shared items in a shared vault. For example, Wi-Fi credentials, credit cards, addresses, or other subscription services you are likely not supposed to be sharing, but we share anyway. We created this because we noted that it really is the #1 driver for increased adoption for using password management in the workplace. Also, we'd like to keep those Netflix accounts out of our work vaults as well. To get a free Families plan as an employee, all you have to do is enter a personal email. It will create a free account for an entire year, and it will renew automatically so long as the user is still in the organization. If the user is no longer with the organization, they still get to use out the full year for free, and a month prior to the end of that year, they'll be notified on whether they'd like to renew their plan or go with using our regular free plan, which is also still very fully featured. Also, I'd just like to note, because we sometimes get this question in support, this is an entirely cryptographically separate Bitwarden account and vaults. It has nothing to do with a work or organizational Bitwarden account. It's just a company-sponsored free premium password management vault for personal use. While it's entirely separate of an account, I do want to show off a really wonderful feature for seamless use of multiple accounts on our apps called account switching. And I can demonstrate this here in our browser extension. You can see if I click on my initials here, I can super easily add up to 5 accounts, and you can easily switch between them. So there's nothing that needs to be reinstalled or anything like that. My final add here is that we do support a dark theme. It doesn't demo really nicely, but I 100% use dark theme for practically everything on my computer. It's just so much better on the eyes. And on our other apps, we have my even more favorite, a Nord gray theme on top of the dark theme that's available, and likely even more themes by the time you're watching this. So that's something I love to add at the end, as it's a lovely benefit. All right, well, that was my whole demo. Thank you guys so much for watching until the end. If you still have questions, do remember that there is the Help Center, which I personally reference so many times a day, and an awesome Learning Center, where there are a bunch of educational videos, step-by-step guides, and of course, great documentation. You can also sign up for our weekly live demo at bitwarden.com/weekly. Or if you're ready, scroll down to the bottom of any Bitwarden page, select Talk to Sales, and get yourself started with Bitwarden Enterprise today.